What happens to a police officer who abuses women? In most cases, nothing. New figures show less than 1% of complaints about police violence lead to the accused being sacked, whether the allegations come from colleagues or the public.
I think it was even a bigger trauma that the people that are supposed to keep you safe actually hurt you even more.
Also this lunchtime, target the over 50s. The Chancellor's pension plans to persuade people not to retire early. Ofcom enters the Gary Lineker row, saying the BBC needs strict rules for news presenters, but needs to work out what to do with other contributors. And King Charles puts his own stamp on the monarchy 2 months before his coronation.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Nina Hossain.
Good afternoon. What happens when the people paid to protect us do the exact opposite? Not much. The National Police Chiefs Council has published new figures showing less than 1% of police officers who faced accusations of sexual harassment, sexual assault or violence against women were sacked. It's calling on the Home Office to bar anyone convicted or cautioned for this type of offence from policing. It follows the high-profile cases of Wayne Couzens and David Carrick, two police officers who brought shame on the profession. Today's figures, as shocking as they are, show that the likes of Couzens and Carrick are in the minority, though. The number of officers and staff who faced off accusations over the treatment of women equated to 0.7% of the total police workforce. Ellie Pitt has more.
They are supposed to protect women and girls against violence, and yet there is more evidence that police officers are instead perpetrating abusive behaviour. Harassment, the use of force and sexual offending make up more than 1,000 complaints against officers and staff in data released today. Juliana's ex-boyfriend is serving an 18-year sentence for raping her. She's waived her right to anonymity. She's waiting for an investigation to finish into her complaints about an officer on her case who she says behaved inappropriately.
I'm very upset with how I was treated. I feel like I was exponentially traumatized for no reason. And I think it was even a bigger trauma that the people that are supposed to keep you safe actually hurt you even more.
In just a 6-month period, more than 1,500 police officers and staff in England and Wales were accused of violence against women and girls. These include internal conduct cases and public complaints. Just 13 officers and staff were sacked for misconduct, while 91% of public complaints saw no further action.
What is it you're searching for?
This is the first time this information has been released and follows the jailing of serial sex offender David Carrick, who assaulted 12 women while working for the Metropolitan Police.
I've only been a police officer for 20 years.
And former Met Officer Wayne Couzens is in prison for life for murdering Sarah Everard.
In publishing this data, we're being clear about the robust systems that we're putting in place, the tightening up of these sorts of investigations, and ultimately we want to remove these people from policing. So the message today is please do trust us, report anything that you feel is concerning and we will do something about it.
Force bosses face fighting crime inside their own ranks in an attempt to restore trust in those who wear a police uniform. Ellie Pitt, ITV News.
The Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, will unveil his first budget tomorrow. One of his big ideas to grow the economy is to persuade people to work for longer. To do that, he will announce a rise in the tax-free pension allowance to discourage early retirement. Let's speak to our political correspondent, Harry Horton. Harry, how could this work?
Well, one of the biggest challenges facing the UK economy at the moment is a shortage of workers. There are over 1 million job vacancies in the UK at the moment. That number has been falling, but the Chancellor wants to try and address this, and he wants people who are able to work and aren't working to return to work, and people who are currently working, he wants them to work longer if they are able to. And one of the ways he's going to do this is by increasing the amount people can put into their pensions without having to pay tax, what's known as the lifetime allowance. Currently that's set at just over £1 million. The Chancellor is going to significantly increase that, we understand, in his budget tomorrow. And the aim is to stop people retiring early or encourage people who can to work more hours when they are close to retirement. This is a particular issue for doctors and consultants. Many of them make the calculation that it's not financially viable for them to continue working. And speaking to one minister this morning, he says he hopes that this week's budget will change that.
Well, there's a lot of people who have spoken to the Chancellor in recent months about the fact that we're losing people from the workforce at different points, and it's really important we get people back in. And this is where it's about getting consultant surgeons, about consultant doctors back into the workforce at a time when we really do have pressure on our staff, and it's really important that we get waiting lists down, which is one of the Prime Minister's 5 commitments.
Now, critics say this will only affect a minority of workers, and many people aren't entirely convinced it will work. We're not expecting any big spending announcements, any big tax cuts when the Chancellor walks out of number 11 tomorrow. Instead, tweaking these policies to try and encourage more people to stay working in the hope that that can boost the UK economy.
Harry, thank you very much. And if you have questions about how the budget might affect you, send them to us at budgetquestions@itv.com and we will try to answer them on tomorrow's programmes. In the last half an hour, a woman who lied and faked allegations of grooming by an Asian gang has been sentenced to 8.5 years. Eleanor Williams' fake accusations of trafficking and physical abuse led to a solidarity movement called Justice for Ellie. It also led to open hostility in her hometown of Barrow and almost 100 recorded hate crimes. Some of the accused men even attempted suicide. Our reporter Rachel Townsend was at the sentencing at Preston Crown Court and joins me now. This is a very unusual case, Rachel.
Yeah, that's right. It's a case that had a devastating effect on both the community and those who were falsely accused, some of whom were in court today for the sentencing of Eleanor Williams. Now, the 22-year-old had claimed that she was a victim of an Asian grooming gang. They'd trafficked and beaten her, she said, causing her dreadful injuries. But the whole thing was a lie. During the court case, it emerged that Williams herself had in fact bought a hammer from Tesco and inflicted those injuries on herself. Now, the prosecution labelled her as a fantasist and the jury agreed, convicting her of perverting the course of justice. Well, the sentencing in this case was recorded. The judge handed Williams an 8.5-year jail term, and he also warned of the dangers of such false accusations.
We are aware that sex trafficking of young females does occur. There is a risk that genuine victims will, as a result of this defendant's actions, feel deterred from reporting it. People may be less likely to believe their allegations. I'm sure that those charged with investigating such offences will do all in their power to avoid any reluctance to investigate such allegations.
Well, as you alluded to, Williams' Facebook posts, they triggered huge demonstrations in her hometown of Barrow-in-Furness in Cumbria. Police said such displays of mass anger hadn't been seen for over 30 years. She also made claims against white men too. One, Jordan Trengrove, was accused of raping her at knife point. He said he tried to kill himself while spending 10 weeks in prison on remand for a crime he didn't commit. Before being jailed, through her barrister, Eleanor Williams said, "I was young and confused. I'm not saying I'm guilty, but I done wrong on some things, and I'm sorry."
Rachel Townsend, thank you. The boss of the broadcasting watchdog Ofcom told MPs today the Gary Lineker row goes straight to the heart of the BBC's wider reputation in news coverage. Dame Melanie Dawes welcomed the corporation investigating its current social media guidelines for staff and contributors when she appeared before the Media Select Committee this morning. Sajil Karia has been watching. What exactly did she have to say then?
Well, her central point here is about trust in the corporation and whether there is a perception among the public that the BBC's views are shaped by a particular perspective. And that's what Dame Melanie says when she talks about this row going to the very heart of the BBC's reputation on impartiality. Now, she recognises that this is a matter for the BBC board, not for Ofcom, but she says what the Gary Lineker row has exposed is that the BBC's guidelines has grey areas.
I think they need to, do what they're doing, which is to look at those guidelines and see whether they're still right in a world of increasing use of social media, and look again at how they, at what they ask of contributors as well as their staff.
So the question for the BBC is if presenters like Gary Lineker, who aren't news and current affairs journalists, but do present on the BBC, in this case Match of the Day, but don't actually express any kind of political view, can they still express those personal views on their own Twitter accounts? In this case of Gary Lineker, of course, he has millions of followers. And can the public distinguish between, say, Gary Lineker's own personal views and that of the BBC's? Now, Dame Melanie recognises this is a hugely complex area, and she says, but it's a matter that is really important, and that's what a BBC review is now trying to establish.
Sajil Karia, thank you. A man who racially abused the England striker Ivan Toney online has been banned from every football ground in the UK in a legal first. Police treated the message sent to the Brentford player as a hate crime. It was traced to Antonio Neal, who's become the first person to be the subject of a banning order under the Police, Crime, Sentencing and Courts Act 2022. A breast cancer charity has developed a unique awareness campaign to encourage people to talk to each other about their diagnosis. The Chat is an online drama that unfolds in the form of a group messages between 4 friends as one of them undergoes cancer treatment. Charlotte Cross has more.
This is not a message I ever expected to leave, and I'm sorry, I just couldn't say it to your faces. Right, so look, basically, I have breast cancer.
It's news that nobody wants to get, let alone have to share with their loved ones.
What can we do? I can't pretend I'm okay.
A new drama by charity Breast Cancer Now follows 4 friends as one of the group is diagnosed, and it's told in a distinctive new way.
We want open and honest conversations about the impact of breast cancer on people's lives. So that's for people that are experiencing breast cancer, people that may be affected by family members, so that people don't feel alone.
And that's what The Chat hopes to show. Through a series of messages, voice notes and video calls, not only do we learn of Heather's diagnosis as her friends do, we hear how she breaks the news to her children.
It was really hard. It was really hard.
And we hear their messages of support.
Whatever you need, we're here and we love you.
Around 55,000 women and 370 men are diagnosed with breast cancer every year in the UK. And in a society which typically doesn't like to talk about it, the charity hopes The Chat can start breaking those taboos.
I really hope that this campaign will make it all right to have these kind of conversations, that this is something that needs to be spoken about. This is life, this is happening every day.
Episode 2 is available now.
I couldn't do this without you.
Charlotte Cross, ITV News.
Now, you may have noticed we're on air a little earlier than normal today. That's because straight after this programme, ITV's coverage of the Cheltenham Festival begins. Jockeys, trainers, pundits and punters are all gearing up for 4 days of horse racing. And this year there are a few changes, including scrapping the traditional dress code. Here's ITV Racing's Ed Chamberlain with what to expect.
Welcome to a glorious Cheltenham, everyone, which is a cauldron of excitement ahead of the Cheltenham Festival 2023. 3. No dress code this year, of course, and yet with the Irish pilgrimage and over 60,000 people here today, we'll still have all the glitz and glamour of Cheltenham and plenty of tweed. We also need to have, the sport certainly does, a really good Cheltenham Festival. The headlines into this meeting have all been about the whip. With new whip rules to try and improve the perception of the sport, let's hope the jockeys play ball and the headlines are not made by bans and a possible disqualification. Let's hope it's the horses making the headlines, and today the headline act is Constitution Hill, who could be jump racing's Frankel if he blitzes home in the champion hurdle. And after that, we say goodbye to Honeysuckle. The two-time champion hurdle winner has her final race today with Rachel Blackmore. It promises to be thrilling, it promises to be emotional. We're all really looking forward to it.
Ed Chamberlain. Finally, the first stamps featuring the King have gone on sale. His image will replace the late Queen's silhouette, which was a key feature of our correspondence for nearly 60 years. The design of King Charles's first set of stamps nods to one of his passions. Sally Biddulph has the details.
A bouquet of British blooms, from the garden to gracing the latest edition of special stamps. All the favourites are there, like the late Queen's fragrant sweet pea and the sunflower, now a symbol of solidarity with Ukraine. But something is new, different, in the top left-hand corner.
These special stamps are part of the set that we use to celebrate the very best of British, and what we've chosen here are 10 of the most popular garden flowers. Now, as we know, the King is a keen gardener himself, and it seemed appropriate that he should feature for the first time on stamps during his reign on a set of stamps that celebrate gardens and the flowers that we find in them.
King Charles's love of nature is well known. He's spent years establishing the gardens around his Highgrove estate, has planted countless commemorative trees. And a headline flower show would simply not be the same without royal approval, a passion shared with his wife Camilla, the Queen Consort. In a break from tradition different from his mother, King Charles's silhouette appears on the special edition stamps without a laurel wreath around his head. Likewise, on the everyday stamps, he appears without a crown. They will hit circulation next month. But from today, this posy of floral philately is making history as the first set of stamps of the Carolean age. Sally Biddulph, ITV News.
That's all for now. Mary will be here with the evening news at the usual time of 6:30 from me. Bye-bye.